Hello and welcome everyone to a new video on our YouTube channel. So today's video is going to be showing you how to rebuild a transfer case on this 2005 BMW X3. In this rebuild video, we're going to be focusing on the ACT 400 transfer case, which is available in these X3 BMWs. It's going to be similar to the X5 transfer case, which is the ACT 500. It has some minor differences, but it can be done the same way. The issue that we have is that the 4x4 light is always on. We inspected the actuator motor, it has no issues, so the problem must be inside of the transfer case. It has a weird sound when hard accelerating, so the only issue that comes to mind is that the chain inside of the transfer case has stretched out and it's skipping teeth. So now we're going to take the car to the garage, lift her up, put her on some jack stands, and start the disassembly. Okay guys, so now that we got the car up on some jack stands, we're gonna start by dropping down the exhaust from the front to the back. As you can see, we got the whole exhaust system out of the way. We removed a couple of nuts on the back side and two exhaust hangers in the middle of the car, as well as the collector pipe towards the front. Now we're gonna do the most important thing, which is to fire the car up and heat it with open headers. So now after we had enough fun, we're gonna go under the car and start removing these heat shields to expose the drive shaft. Okay guys, so we're gonna mark where the center support bearing. We're gonna make a line around its mounting place, just to be sure that we put it back in the same place. And because we don't want to cause any unnecessary vibrations, just we're gonna trace it from the outside like that. We're also gonna mark where the drive shaft. I know the wheel was gonna be replaced, but I'm gonna mark on the drive shaft and put a mark on the yoke on the transmission side, just in the area where this bolt is, like that maybe. And we're gonna put one also on the drive shaft, between the drive shaft and the differential. We're gonna be removing the whole drive shaft from the front to the back, because we're gonna replace the center support bearing and the weeble in the next video. Stay tuned for that also. You can remove the transfer case by dropping the drive shaft from the front and from the middle. Now we got all the bolts from the front of the drive shaft out. We need to remove the center support bearing to drop it from the transfer case, but we're gonna remove it from the differential first to take it all as one piece. So now that we got the drive shaft out of the way, we're gonna start by unbolting the cross member from the car. Make sure you put a jack under the transmission to hold it, because this is also the same cross member for the transfer case and the transmission. These are 30mm bolts, 4 bolts, one on each corner. These are torque to yield bolts, so make sure you get yourself new ones. As you can see, the transfer case dropped, but thankfully I have the jack prepared. Here is a 90mm bolt that holds the transfer case to the cross member. This is the mount. Now we're gonna start unbolting the transfer case from the transmission. It uses E12 bolts, same as the bolts that hold the drive shaft to the differential. Now we're gonna unbolt the front drive shaft from the transfer case. After removing the first two bolts, you need a friend to put the car in neutral so you can spin the drive shaft, and then put it in park and press on the brakes so you can break the rest of the bolts free. Now using an E7, I'm gonna remove the position sensor of the transfer case from it, disconnecting everything from it, and now we can remove the rest of the bolts and drop it down. There is 6 bolts that hold the transfer case to the transmission, 2 on the right side, 2 on the left side, and 2 on the top. Okay guys, so as you saw, we pulled the transfer case out. Now we're gonna drain the oil out of it. This is the drain plug. It's a 16mm bolt. Now we are removing the actuator motor. I'm gonna put all the bolts where they came out so we don't get confused when assembling. Now we're gonna remove all the E10 bolts around the perimeter of the transfer case. They hold both housings of the transfer case together. So we removed the C-clip. We also marked where the yoke is mounted on the axle here to make sure that we put it back where it was. Okay guys, so as you can see, we separated the two cases. Now there is a prying point here on this side and one here, but on this side it's hard to remove, so we need to whack it with the hammer. Make sure you put a piece of wood between the hammer and the transfer case. So here we are guys, after we separated the case, we exposed the stretched out chain. As you can see, it's wobbly. So we're gonna remove this shaft to remove the chain. Now to remove this shaft, it's as easy as it can get. Just pull it out. It may be hard for some reason in your case, but in my case it was not. There's no place for a circlip to be installed, so just pull it out. It's sometimes it may be hard, so you need a press to push it out. If you don't have a press and you need to push this out, never whack it with a hammer directly. Make sure you put a piece of wood or anything that makes a cushion on the metal so you don't warp it or mushroom it. Now all we do is remove this gear. Make sure there are no washers. The bearing looks fine. Just like that, we removed the chain. Okay guys, so it's the next day here. As you can see, I have in my hands the brand new chain for the transfer case. As you can see, this problem is common on these ATC 400 transfer cases, which due to heat and excessive mileage or excessive usage, the chain will expand and it will rattle and sometimes even jump some teeth. So here's the old one. I'm gonna replace it with the new one. We're not gonna finally install it now, we're just gonna test fit it and show you that it is tighter. As you can see guys, with the new chain installed, it's way tighter than the old one. It can barely move. Guys, so this is the oil pump of the system. As you can see, on the rotor here, there is a keyway which lands on this corresponding part here. This is what drives the oil pump. Now we're gonna swap all these parts from this part to the other one because this is the way it should be installed. To install the oil pump, it has this special hose. It goes under this mechanism here and it sits right here. Guys, so now that we pulled the drum, I'm gonna set it, taking into the consideration the oil pump drive system, in place here. Now we need to install this thrust washer. Make sure all the clutches are aligned. Make sure you install the actuated drive on inside this lever. Long side goes toward the bearing, short side goes toward the shaft. Make sure you clean the magnet up and reinstall it in its position. Now we're going to apply a thin coat of RTV to seal the transfer case. After we applied a thin coat of sealer around the perimeter of the sealing surface, we setted the housing on this piece of wood, making sure that there is a free space where this shaft is going to go through. As you can see, now we're going to flip it around, slap it on. Make sure you never pull the two parts of the transfer case together with the bolt, because you might strip the bolts out if something in there is binding. Okay, guys, so as you saw, we closed the case. Make sure you never flip the transfer case upside down before you set in some bolts hand tight, because then the actuator gear might fall out and it won't hook up to the mechanism. After we installed the yoke, I'm gonna reinstall the C-clamp. Circle. Okay guys, so as you can see, we finished installing the output flange. Now we're gonna install the actuator motor. Okay guys, so now we're gonna install the drain plug with a new crush washer. Then I'm gonna open the fill plug. I'm gonna fill the transfer case while it's outside, because it's easier. Now it's time to fill the transfer case with some fluid. Here we have the gear oil that we're going to be using. It's 75W90, but it's synthetic and it's GL5LS, which means limited slip, which means it has the friction modifier for the clutch discs that are inside of the transfer case. Now this transfer case takes less than 1 liter. It's about 0.8. I'm gonna be filling it. As you can see guys, the fill plug started draining, which means that it's full. Of course, using a new crush washer. Now we got everything ready, we finished rebuilding the transfer case, and it's now time to throw it back in place. Now a quick thing to note is, make sure you leave the RTV on before adding the fluid for about half to 1 hour for it to cure good enough, so then you can add the fluid. Plus, before assembling the transfer case back together, make sure you check every bearing to see if it's functional or if it's binding or even if it has any rubbing sound. If it does, you need to change it. In our case, everything was fine, only the chain was loose. So now we are under the car. We're gonna bench press the transfer case in position. Now it's time to install the cross member. Okay guys, so now that we got the transfer case installed onto the transmission, it's time to install the cross member. Those are some of the old cross member bolts. As you can see over here on the bottom side towards the head, the threads are further from each other from the top side. This is because these are torque to yield bolts. This is a perfect example of how torque to yield bolts works. As you can see, it expanded and extended, which makes a perfect lock, but it makes also a weak point here if you want to reinstall the bolts. So you cannot reuse torque to yield bolts. Make sure you get yourself new ones. Now we're gonna install the drive shaft first before bolting the cross member up, because it's easier to access the yoke on the transfer case. Guys, so as you can see, we installed the drive shaft on the transfer case, and now we are jacking her up to install the cross member. Okay guys, so now it's time to install the heat shield after we installed the drive shaft. As you can see, it mounts with this bracket that has the exhaust hangers on it and a couple of screws on the around the perimeter of its surface and this plate here. Now it's time to bring in the exhaust and start bolting her up. Okay guys, so as you saw, we hooked up the exhaust from the back side. We still have to hook it up on the hangers in the middle and then bolt it to the downpipe. Got ourselves some new exhaust gaskets because the old ones are cracked. Here are the new ones. Now we're gonna go down and continue bolting the exhaust. Now after putting everything back together, everything from the bottom is bolted up. I'm gonna start her up. So as you saw guys, we showed you how to rebuild your own transfer case on your BMW X3. Hopefully you found this video helpful and informational. Make sure you stick around the rest of the videos that we're gonna be uploading soon. See you then. Peace.